Welcome back to Early Action with Mossing and Patel. Now, Mossing, as I've told you, and you were actually in this league too, but I'm in a Survivors League, and going into today, there was about 10 people still alive in this league. 6 of them picked the Patriots to beat the Broncos, and I think to the shock of them, and especially me and you, the Broncos win without even scoring a single touchdown. Final score being 18-12. What did you see in this Ryan McManus game? Because that's pretty much all the Broncos had as for his highlights. Drew Lock didn't play exceptionally well. Their defense played well, but like nothing that would make you feel that they're one of the elite defenses in the league at this point. What did you see from the Patriots? Do you see that COVID rust from not being able to practice show up? And where do the Patriots go from here?
Yeah, my biggest takeaway is I don't think I've ever seen a Bill Belichick offense play that sloppy. It seemed like nobody was in sync at all, and you have to just imagine it's from not being on the field together. Because Cam Newton had COVID, and then they rushed to get back to a game against K pretty well there. And then Stephon Gilmore had COVID, and they couldn't practice. So back-to-back practice weeks could lead to a lot of this rust, and that's what I think it is. I think Cam Newton kind of reverted back to what we saw at this end of the time in Carolina, being sloppy with the football, missing throws. We'll dive into the stats in a little bit, but overall I think New England just looked bad. I'm not too concerned for them, though. I think Bill Belichick will be able to turn it around. Their defense played relatively well. I know they gave up 18 points on all field goals. In the red zone, they were stellar, and then they gave up yards outside of the red zone. But I'd say overall, I'd give their defense a B grade. Their offense, though, was an F. They could not move the ball at all.
So here's what I noticed. Now, you mentioned Bill Belichick, and obviously he's known to be the defensive architect of this team, but his impact on the offense is pretty simple. It's boiled down to one word, and that's discipline. Bill Belichick demands discipline on offense, defense, special teams. Other than that, he doesn't interfere with the offense too much. So when you see the Patriots having 4 fumbles, all of these untimely penalties, and just being sloppy at the point of attack, that is rare, like you said, for a Bill Belichick team. So I expect that to be cleaned up at the minimum, because the greatest strength on this Patriots team, I don't think, is on the roster or the personnel. It's Bill Belichick and his impact and his intangibles he provides. So that was very surprising. I agree with you. I think it was COVID and practice related, but some of the things I really worry about when I look at this game is, number one, the Patriots on offense, they definitely don't have any receiver threats. But we knew that entering this season and entering this game. But when you look at their running game, something that they've had to lean on this year, Cam went for 76 yards. But he had, I don't know how many fumbles, I think it was 2. But nobody else on that team had over 20 yards rushing. In fact, nobody averaged more than 3.2 yards rushing per attempt. And in a New England offense with no premier wide receiver weapons, and an offense that your number one receiver is probably Julian Edelman, who only has 2 catches for under 8 yards, that's not going to cut it. And this Broncos defense is not a defense that you should struggle this much against. I really have said this whole year, and I think the Patriots do need to get themselves a wide receiver at the trade deadline. Initially, the 2 names that come to mind are Julio Jones and Allen Robinson. I wasn't expecting the Bears to be this successful, so I don't think Allen Robinson is going to go anywhere. But Julio Jones might. Atlanta's rebuilding. They might be willing to trade him away. Another potential target could be Michael Gallup in Dallas. Either way, Cam Newton needs somebody to throw the ball to, and I just don't think that this is sustainable, and it clearly isn't. It kind of came to a head with the Broncos losing at home against this Broncos team that everyone thought they were going to blow away. I don't know. I've been really wary of this Patriots team this whole time. I think we're so used to their success and their dominance over the past few years. We've given them, a lot of slack and a lot of leeway. But I don't know if they deserve it. Compared that to the Tennessee Titans, who've historically not been a good football team, and they don't get the respect they deserve. And here they are, undefeated 5-0, beating teams like the Bills along the way. And yet we continue to give the Patriots this leeway and all this benefit of the doubt. I'm just not willing to do that anymore, especially because while their defense is their strength, they give up 100 yards rushing to Philip Lindsay. Like, there's just no excuse for that, and I just don't know how you can't beat a team that only puts up 18 points. I just don't see it.
Yeah, their defense is put in a lot of bad positions by that offense.
Yeah, I agree there.
I think the Patriots' offense is just a little bit off, though. Just even looking at the very last throw Cam Newton made.
Yeah.
It actually looked like a pretty good throw. It looked more of a miscommunication rather than a poor throw.
You talking the one to Harry there on the right
Yeah,
side?
at the very end. Yep, a little comeback route, and Harry almost looked like he was looking for it inside and Cam threw it to the outside. So just little things like that, I think, is the whole not having those practice reps. Which, if you can't throw the ball, he only threw the ball 25 times. He was 17 for 25, but 8 out of 17 of those completions came on dump-offs to James White. So you know he's not throwing the ball down the field. So really, he only completed 9 passes, and that's not even including the other running backs.
Okay, so when you look at the Patriots, a lot of people have them as a contender. A lot of people think, oh, they're starting off slow. Cam Newton's just got to the team, et cetera, et cetera. They can still win the division. They're still a contender in that AFC. But I'm looking at this offense, and in the football world today, you need an explosive offense. Gone are the days where you can be like, oh, we have a really good defense and a really good running game. That's just not how the sport works anymore. You need to have an explosive offense led by a great quarterback. Unless you're the 49ers from last year, in which you had one of the best D lines of all time, and you had one of the most genius play callers and most schematic run schemes I've ever really seen, like most well-designed runs that there's ever been in the game of football. You need a great quarterback, and you need him to have at least decent weapons in the AFC. Here's his competition. Cam Newton's competition in the AFC is going to be Patrick Mahomes, and you know who he has: Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Hardman, CEH, everyone else, right? You have Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, John Brown. You have Lamar Jackson. He has Mark Andrews, Hollywood Brown, Nick Boyle. A running game that hasn't had too much success this year, but we know for the most part they're a good team. Those are his main competitions. He also has Big Ben in Pittsburgh, who has now Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, a decent run game behind James Conner. I just don't see how this Patriots offense is going to be able to compete with those teams and put up anywhere near those numbers. Yes, they did go toe-to-toe with Seattle there on Sunday Night Football a couple of weeks ago, but I think that was more of teams not knowing how Cam Newton runs the ball and all those quarterback draws they had, and nobody really knew what to expect from them. But now that there is some game tape on this Patriots offense, I just don't see how they can compete against those teams going forward this regular season or in the playoffs if they do make it.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to compete for a Super Bowl this year like a lot of people thought after week 1 with Cam Newton.
Mm-hmm.
But I do still think that they're going to find a way to win their division. I think their offense is strong enough and their defense is strong enough to be able to. Obviously, they're going to get 2 wins against the Jets.
Right.
It's going to come down to them against the Dolphins and Bills. How many of those games can they win? And then can they sneak past the other contenders, which we'll cover in another segment. But I just want to break down some Cam stats in his last health versus how he's been doing this year.
Okay.
So the quarterback rating has been pretty much about the same. In his last healthy year, and in 2018 in Carolina, it was 67.9, and this year it's at 68.1. Pretty even. He's on pace to throw for about roughly the same yards, 3,000 roughly, a little over that. The big outlier here is his last healthy year in Carolina, he threw for 24 touchdowns and only 13 interceptions. So a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio about. Not great, but all right, not too bad because he can make up for it on some rushing touchdowns as well.
Right.
This year, he has 2 passing touchdowns and 4 interceptions. So that has been reversed. So for Cam to carry this offense, he's just going to have to take care of the ball much, much better than he has been. He has to get those passing touchdowns. So while he's on pace for more than 3 times the rushing touchdowns this year, he needs to be better in the passing game. He cannot be turning the ball over. And until he proves to defenses that he can throw the ball downfield and push it without throwing interceptions, teams are going to be able to load the box, load up on stopping their run, and they're not going to be able to move the ball, putting immense pressure on their defense.
Yeah, here's the 2 reactions I have to what you just said. Number one, a lot of the rushing touchdown stats projections for this year is a little bit, skewed because he had so many in that Miami Dolphins game and in the Seattle Seahawks game. That he had a lot more rushing touchdowns than you would anticipate him having. So it kind of skews the numbers when you project it from a 6-game sample to a 16-game season. Even though he's had success rushing, I just don't think it's going to exactly mirror that trend that we've seen so far this year. And number two, I know I mentioned earlier about how he needs another wide receiver like a Allen Robinson, like a Julio Jones, just some deep threat, some true number one. And the most common argument people have to that is, well, when he won the MVP with Carolina, he didn't have any wide receivers like that. He had Ted Ginn. He had an aging Greg Olsen. He had this, he had that. And yes, that is true, but here's one of the few key differences between that season and this season. Number one, the NFL now is much different than the NFL was then. If you remember his MVP season, the team that won the Super Bowl were the Denver Broncos, led by Peyton Manning, in a very struggling offense. They had a historic, legendary defense, sure, but their offense was miserable. And could you see a team like that having success in an NFL like today? I don't think so. You won't see that kind of success. Yeah, like this is the year of the offenses. So I just don't think that the NFL then is similar to what it is now. You need to be able to push the ball down the field. You need to have a lot of points on the board. So far through 6 weeks, this is the highest scoring NFL that there ever has been, whether that's COVID-related, practice-related, what have you. Regardless, you need to score points in this league. The Atlanta Falcons are, 1-5 now?
Yep. But
they're still putting up at least 30 points a game. So that just goes to tell you that you need to put up points in this league, no matter how good your defense is. And then you go back to another point that you made about how Cam Newton has all these stats, he has this, he has that, but I just don't see it from an eye test perspective that he can overcome all these turnovers he's having. Josh Allen is a perfect example of a guy who turns the ball over more than you would like, but he makes up for it with enough big plays. Big plays being defined as any play over 20 yards. If you have enough plays like that, you can get what I could call cheap touchdowns, meaning you don't have to struggle for them. A lot of people.
You don't have to be perfect. You don't
exactly.
Have to every single play down the field.
Right. A lot of people, especially commentators that you see these days, because they're from the older generation, they really like the idea of 13-play drives, 10-play drives, time possession, this, that, and the other. The problem with having a drive that lasts 10 plays or 13 plays or lasts 10 minutes, whatever it may be, is that means you need to execute at a high level for a longer period of time. The probability of you doing that is just less. So instead of getting into a third down and manageable, you should be trying to avoid third downs to begin with, because you just can't expect to convert every third down. And that's how teams get in this endless cycle of getting a few yards on first down, a few yards on second down. And now we're in a good third and short. Sure, you're in a third and short or even a third and medium, but all it takes is for one offensive lineman on one given third down to miss a block, you get sacked or a holding call, this, that, the other, whatever it may be.
Defensive lineman gets his hand up, yeah.
That's all it takes for you to completely stall a drive. And if you look at the Patriots, their offense, when their running game isn't going as well as they need it to be, nobody has over 20 yards other than Cam, then they need those big plays on the passing game in order to even compete and tread water. And without any weapons to do that, it's just not going to look good for this Patriots team. I think we're all a little bit stuck in the past thinking that this Patriots team is just going to, recover and come back. They don't have Tom Brady anymore, and they have way too many players who opted out this season who were key contributors, and I do not really believe in the Patriots, and this game kind of just spelled it all out for me to really internalize.
Yeah, I'm not ready to give up on the Patriots yet. I still think they have a lot left in the tank. I'd just also like to go back real quick. I think I misspoke. I said quarterback rating earlier, and I meant to say completion percentage. He's thrown about the same number of completions.
Okay.
So this year, he's throwing completions higher because he's just dumping the ball off. Anybody can sit back there and dump the ball off.
Yeah, exactly.
In the rating in his last healthy year, he was up at 94.2%, which, to give you an idea, Aaron Rodgers is about in the same realm. That's about top 10 in the league quarterback.
That's passer rating or QBR?
Passer rating.
Passer rating, okay.
Passer rating, 94.2. Aaron Rodgers was around there, top 10 quarterback in the league.
Mm-hmm.
This year so far, he's at 86, which was similar to Ryan Fitzpatrick last year, which is about bottom 10 of the league. So that's a big difference in the way he's executing, and I think it shows, and I think it's reflected in why the Patriots are 2-3 and for this first time since I think 2003.
Yeah, like I said, I'm completely out on the Patriots. Any closing thoughts on this game and going forward for these two teams?
My only thoughts is I can't.
You won't count them out.
Bill Belichick. I
Not
can't
count
count
them
them
out. All right. I'm gonna count them out. I'm gonna count them out.
All right. Moving on.